Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in our exploration of excellence. We call it Loser's Lunch. And we ask the question almost every week, are you ready? Are you willing to eat Loser's Lunch? I'm out here on my own this week, having just returned from Tulsa, Oklahoma. That was off the 1980. By the way, with my broken fingers and everything, I tried muddled through that. Why don't you just pick one of the more difficult Van Halen solos from Hot for Teacher, 1984. Figure we're going to go to school a little bit today on a number of different things. So we might as well do Hot for Teacher. Really one of my favorite solos in the entire Van Halen catalog. So hopefully you like Van Halen. If you don't, you're missing out. We're sitting here at 285. The 10-year had dropped below 280 for a bit, popping up a little bit today. Stock's not helping. Probably the Putin failed assassination attempt or whatever is going on over there, making people feel like if the war comes to an end, it'll help the supply chain, blah, 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 blah. This week, we got building permits tomorrow, market PMI, Richmond Fed, home sales, which if you remember, new home sales were down 8.6% last month. We're expecting an increase of about 1%. Wednesday, mortgage apps, durables, CapEx, some gasoline prices, some note auctions. Thursday is the second print of GDP. They're expecting a slight improvement over the first print of Q1. Instead of negative 1.413 is what the expectation is. And as we talked about last time, we need 3 prints of it to confirm, to some workers out there, to confirm the first quarter of negative growth. And we talked about how there's no way we're going to get all the way, to positive. And that's an example. The first revision, 1.3 to 1.4. But jobless claims, some pending sales on Thursday, KC Fed. Friday, we've got PCE, which, as I've indicated before, used to be more meaningful than PPI and CPI. This is where I think you're going to start to see a little bit of case of liars figuring and figures lying, as I like to say. Some of these inflation numbers over the next few months are likely to get better, even though maybe they're really not getting better. And, you got to understand that when you're looking at the data, so often are we talking about month over month, year over year. So if I say to you that things are the best that they've ever been this month by double, and next month they're 10% worse, gun to your head, wouldn't you accept that? Well, of course you would. Because if they've been the best they've ever been by double and they're only 10% worse, that means that they're the best they've ever been by almost double. Yet it looks bad. Oh, my God. Month over month, sales contracted by 10%. Well, was it sustainable for us to be double? Was it sustainable for us to double every month or every quarter or every year? Imagine if your business doubled every year. Imagine if you could double your money every year. And then, so what if I said to you right now, would you sign an agreement saying you're going to double your business every year for the next 5 years? And then in year 6, your business was going to be 10% worse than the previous year. Is that really a bad thing? So anyway, the point of it is, I could argue that over the next 3, 4, 5 months, inflation might still be persistently hot, but on a year-over-year basis, look bad. Last year, prices were X. This year, they're half X, but they're double last month. And I'm just making up numbers here for illustrative purposes. But so this is where we could have some really hot numbers from the prior year make some really good numbers look bad. Anyway, we're expecting month over month PCE to be 0.3. We're expecting a core year over year to fall under 5% at 4.9. And if you remember last month, the PCE numbers actually were bond friendly to some extent. And then, of course, bond market closes early on Friday for Memorial Day weekend. We'll have gin and tonics in the Hamptons with all the bond traders, probably at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, because that's when they get out of there and they tell the junior traders not to fuck stuff up. Last week, what happened after Monday? Retail sales, I have to tell you, was a little surprised by the retail sales number. Now, what I did not have an opportunity to do because I was away is to sort of see if this was a bit of a bullshit number like January with some sort of massive seasonal adjustment. But nonetheless, on the surface, hotter than expected. That did not help us on Tuesday. Housing market index missed, and make no mistake about it, I don't gloss over that number. I sort of keep hearing, and I want to touch on this, by the way, in a minute, about how the housing market is cooling. Got some interesting observations on that. I really didn't have a chart for Jenna to share because it's like a dynamic chart, I guess. So I'm going to do a really boring thing and kind of read the chart to you. But nonetheless, if you're taking notes, you might find some interest in it. Mortgage market index continues to sort of crater. Purchase index went down to 225, refi 826. More on that in a moment. Previous was 255 and 913 for those keeping score. Housing starts negative, not great, potentially. Building permits, also -3. I mean, if the Fed is watching and they really don't give a shit, you'd say, okay, it's already happening. And this is that whole recalibration thing. And everyone that told me we've got 5 years of inventory. Wrong. And this is the sort of stuff that proves it. It's already weakening. Philly Fed, terrible number. They expected 16. It came in at 2.6. Jobless claims also missed to the worst. Continuing claims actually missed to the better. Existing home sales missed. And home sales percentage change was negative. Leading indicators negative. So what does all that mean? I think what all that means is that everything's going to plan. I said there was a 70% chance that rates would be lower in the summer. I recalibrated that to 50. I recalibrated that to 60 or 65. And I'm still there. I think that these numbers over the next couple of months are going to get bad. And an example I used was, imagine all the folks who bought Bitcoin on margin. What is Bitcoin right now in real time? Let's pull it up. Bitcoin price. And I use that just because it's easy. I mean, the price is half of what it was. So it's 30,400. So imagine if you're late to the game and you bought Bitcoin at, I think the high was 64 grand, call it 60, whatever. And you've lost half and it was all on margin. By the way, you're out of money. You're getting stopped out. And I remember, this reminds me of 1996. I'm a day trader. At the same time, I was in mortgages, and I can't, everything I touch turns to gold. And I'm on full margin. And I walk in from playing golf at a vacation spot. We were out, took a long weekend, and it was like Black Monday or Black Friday, whatever it was, October of 96. And it's like, holy shit. And I had 3 positions: AMD, read-write, and marine drilling. Now think about the AMD. If I had diamond hands on AMD, I would have made an absolute fortune. The bet on read-write, and this is where it's an interesting thing, to digress for a second. Here's right where you can be right but still be wrong. And what I lacked in perspective in those days, and that would have been 25, was that you could be right and still lose. The bet on this company, read-write, they made something called head gimbal accessories for hard drives. And the bet was that there was going to be a revolution in content, video and audio content. And we were going to need hard drive space. And here's also, to digress from the digression, another interesting observation in business, which is that not all businesses and industries always kind of get it right on top of it. So the bet was we were going to need hard drives. I won that bet. We need more space right now in your iPhone. I think I have whatever, a 3 gig iPhone, whatever the heck it is, right? There's more storage space in my iPhone by like an order of magnitude of 1 million than there was in my first computer. It was like 32 megabytes. And now I've got 3 gigs or whatever the hell's in here, right? And in your home computer, you might have like 5 terabytes, unheard of, relative to, 1982, 1996. Forget about the computing power. I'm just talking about storage. And it's all because of content. So hard drive companies were going to make a fortune because we needed so much to pack that content in. And then they didn't, because they gave it away. Why? I still don't know to this point. When you talk about the laws of supply and demand, you would think we have what you need, we're going to charge you top dollar. Didn't really happen, and read-write didn't do well. How did I even get off on this tangent, by the way? So I was right for the wrong. Well, I was right for the right reasons, but it didn't work out. And so there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that. But you look at where interest rates are today, and you turn around and you say, the writing is already on the wall. Sort of hearing it from all over, and the Fed won't get to critical mass. It's just that simple. And these numbers keep reinforcing it. So one of the things I digressed on was purchase applications. Let's talk about that for a second, folks. Had a one-on-one this morning, and we were talking about the purchase market, and the purchase market, arguably being bad or maybe being bad. Here's a news flash. The purchase index, according to the MBA, and give me a little bit of rope on this one, let's call it June 1st, 2020. and again, I want some rope. There are a couple of periods here and there where this is not a factual statement. Okay. But pre-May 25th, 2020, where the purchase index was 281, okay, sitting at either 254, which was April 18th, or 244, which was May 2nd. Last week, maybe a little bit of an outlier at 225, admittedly. We are at higher levels than at any previous time in the last decade. That's how shitty this purchase market is. Some numbers and some dates. April 22nd, 2013, 218.5. February 24th, 2014, 155. August 11th, 2014, 164.8. Had a great week here. November 23rd, 2015, 211.7. Every one of those numbers lower. And the chart sort of goes like this, just so you follow. So I'm not just picking out numbers that sort of make my point conveniently. Here's a good number. 236 on April 24th, 2017. So by most standards, 2017 was an okay mortgage year. Not the end of the world. No one was killing themselves. 236 on April 24th, the middle of purchase season, was lower than the week before last number. Slightly higher than last week's number. And by the way, give or take, the best number that had been seen in the 5 years prior, that was at a high. Put that into perspective. Here's a great number. This is the highest number on the chart up to this point. June 5th, 2017, 261.9. 2 weeks ago, we were within 5 points of that. That's the best purchase index number by the MBA up to that point. You know where the 30-year fixed rate mortgage was according to, this is probably Fannie Mae or maybe Freddie Mac? 3.89. You know where it sits today, given using the same metric? 5.25. 3.89, same amount of purchases, 5.25. Give or take, same amount of purchases in the index. Do rates matter? You know what the index was on April 20th, 2020? 186.4. You know what the 30-year fixed rate mortgage was? 3.33. You know what it was on October 19th, 2019? 241.7 and 3.75 interest rate. So, do we have an inventory problem? Well, if I tell you that the index is higher today than it was just about at any point prior to June 8th, 2020, I'd say the answer is no. Maybe we have a few more buyers. That's sort of a good problem, I guess, to have. It doesn't mean that you have fewer applications. It means that there's a perceived problem. Are there more cash buyers? I get it. I know that there's nuances to the argument. So here's my suggestion is that we dig a little bit deeper. The real moral to the story from what I'm seeing is the business is there. It's just a little bit harder to find. You have to dig a little deeper. You have to get more creative. And I think it's also another lesson how dependent we are on as an industry on refinances, on the low-hanging fruit. on all of us who thought we were absolute geniuses, just sort of refining the same person for the fifth time. And that's great work if you could get it. But it lulls us into, a false sense of security and probably a place of mediocrity that I'm begging anybody that's watching to do better this cycle. That refi index, by the way, is at 826 today, with an interest rate of 5.25, using that same metric. You know what it was on December 17th, 2018, 832, with an interest rate of 4.62. Lower interest rate, same index. 783 on November 19th with a rate of 4.81. Lower index. So did we think that business was bad on November 19th, 2018? Because I seem to think that it was okay. Wasn't gangbusters, but it was okay. 2019, on all accounts, a solid year. Interesting. I just find these numbers fascinating because feel and real are two different things. And, I'm seeing some folks just kill it out there. And then I'm seeing others struggle. And others totally, the deck chairs are out. So, I don't know. We had the PGA this past weekend. Boy, for those who were watching it, you had to feel terrible for Mito Pereira. I mean, just absolutely. And boy, you talk about handling that with grace. The winning score ended up being -5. He was at -10 on Saturday. And then makes a double bogey. I mean, a total meltdown, like John Van de Velde-esque. Pulls out driver, hits it into the water, needs to make a bogey to get into the playoff. Makes a double bogey to miss the playoff. There's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. That can be done. I just think that sometimes we just think we need to do more than we have to do in business. And we press unnecessarily so. Shame. Seems like a super nice guy. Couldn't have handled it better. And I think there's a lot to be learned by both his loss and how he handled the loss. And how he might bounce back from it. So, an interesting story to follow. So yeah, the some things that I think that we need to do as and we touched on this a little bit last week, is I think that we've got to recognize, okay, once and for all, that the creation of value is more important than rattling off a list of prices and benefits. And I think that an appraisal of our businesses is required in a market like this. And how do we bring the emotion back to home buying and the financing therein? And how do we establish the value that's provided to our business partners? I posted something on Instagram today. Patrick's caddy, Kessler, is laying on the ground reading a putt. And the question I asked is, do we work this hard for our business partners and teammates and customers? If the answer is no, then you're probably doing it wrong. You know, and another thing that I'll share is like Sam Horsfield, who came off a win, didn't make the cut. And, it didn't make any excuses. 21 hours on the plane, 6-hour time difference. He was exhausted, and never made an excuse. And, just end, by the way, at the end of the week, because we have to celebrate our wins, just say, look, it sucks. Next week will be another week. Last time this happened, I won, missed a cut, and won. So I'm going to go win next event, and after missing the cut on Friday night, was still able to celebrate the win in Belgium. And so often, and this is something Eddie and I have talked about in the past, is we've had folks and teammates who have been haunted by their past. As we wind down, I sort of want to talk about another lesson that I've learned in business that served me well. Is Eddie and I have talked about some former teammates who just have been plagued and ruined in some cases by their former failures, and how he and I have used our former failures as a catalyst, not to hold us back. I remember the time that I left my house at 7:00 in the morning instead of 8:00. And, it just didn't work out. So I'm never going to do that again. And I'm never going to let anybody else do that again. And when I leave at 8:00 this morning and it just I don't do as much business. Now I'm going to leave at 8:05. And boy, it didn't work out today either. Now it's 8:10. Boy, I'm not going to leave my house until 1:00. And now, maybe I'm never, I'm never going to make that next phone call, because the next phone call never, never. And this is what we do to ourselves. Because like I said, and what I've tried to talk about in my sales training in the past, and understanding what moves people to action, it's a very innate discipline, right? Is if you get slapped, you're not going to do the things that get you slapped. It's that instinctual will to survive, the survival instinct, right? And consequently, if you've done things that aren't successful, you probably don't do things, and if you are haunted by your past successes and failures, and that's what I'm seeing right now. I made this much money last year. I've got to make that much money. If you use that as a catalyst to make the money, I'm going to work twice as hard. I'm going to make twice as many phone calls. I'm going to take some risk. I'm going to recruit like crazy. I'm going to try to figure out what my weaknesses and failures are and endeavor not to do them. Then I love it. But if it's, oh my God, this sucks. What am I going to do? Holy cow. Betty, what do you think? This market sucks, right? John, the fuck are we going to do? Now you start dragging others down instead of picking yourself up. I hate it. And there are some folks that are no longer with us that absolutely can do the job, that absolutely have the skill, but could not, were just hamstrung by who they used to be and not what they are now. what it takes to reclaim that glory. And I got to tell you, one of the best loan officers out there. You know, we have a one-on-one on Thursdays, and we didn't have it this week. And we covered some ground on things that he should be doing. And all of a sudden, I get this call, and I couldn't take it at the moment. And he's like, leave a message. I got to have my fill. And, you know, and so I call him back, and he said, look, I know you talked about this. Just walk me through it, because I'm making these calls. And we spent 10 minutes just blow by blow walking through it. And I loved that. I loved that he wasn't embarrassed to say, I know that we talked about it, but I need to hear it. I need to hear it in more detail, because you didn't necessarily give me detail. You let me kind of figure it out on my own, and I can't. I need to hear it. And we did it, and it was great. And he was pumped. Don't be, if your life depends on it, would you rather look like a fool and be successful, or not look like a fool and fail? Like Al Pacino said in Devil's Advocate, vanity was his favorite deadly sin. You know, and you guys, I think I've mentioned this, like, I'm not overly religious or spiritual. You know, I sort of believe that the tabernacle of God is in your heart. And, you know, I try to live the ultimate commandment of treat others as you'd be treated. And I don't get caught up in some of the other minutia. But I really do believe in the 7 deadly sins. Because it's not the word sin, the deadly, or the 7. And it's not even those things. Like what is greed? What is vanity? But it's the things that the premise behind that make you do. Maybe don't ask questions when you should. Have your eyes bigger than your stomach, as my mother would say when I was a kid, when you shouldn't. Who cares what the people have next door? Unless you use that in a constructive way. So often we don't. So I think that's sort of the takeaway that I'd love for you to have today is, do I use my weaknesses? Do I use the instances where some, one, most, all of the 7 deadly sins can work against me? Do I use those moments when I'm crying in my soup over my past successes and my current and future obstacles? Do I use those things as motivation, as rallying points for the manifestation of my current success? Or do I use those as ghosts to hold me back? Am I hot for teacher? Do I learn? Do I learn, or do I just repeat these mistakes over and over and over again? Every down cycle that I'm too stupid to see coming. Do I have the courage to make a call? Like I did back in November, December. A recession is coming. Like I did in 2018. I had people laugh at me, calling watch dealers, the Lamborghini dealer. When things are bad, call me. You're crazy. Things got bad. I could have been wrong. And if I was wrong, then I should listen to my own advice and learn from that. Why was I wrong? What could I do better next time? There's a saying in golf, 100% of the putts that are left short don't go in. There's a saying that I've used over and over again in business. More money is lost from indecision than the wrong decision. I think so much of what we do is really about courage. The courage to admit when you're wrong, the courage to double down when you're right, identify when you're right and double down, the courage to not look in the rearview mirror, the courage to lead with your chin, the courage to eat loser's lunch. So on that note, thank you, everyone. Next Monday, it is Memorial Day. So we are not going to be live, not because I wouldn't be willing to be live or that post, but we have technical difficulties in how it gets out. All you guys are probably going to be barbecuing hamburgers anyway or whatever. So what we're going to probably do is go live on Tuesday, by the way. So be on the lookout for that. And we'll be back with a guest too. So co-host. So as always, thanks for watching or listening, as I know some of you do on replay, and crush it this week. You know, rock out. See you soon. Thank you. I'm going to shut off the amp here. I didn't do it, so I wouldn't do it earlier in the show. We off? I didn't see that. No, we're still live. Cut it. We're done. Finito. You want me to play us out? I shut off the amp. How can I play us out? Jen is sleeping on the other side of the glass. All right, what else are we going to talk about? We're still live, Jenna. Cut it. Boy, you know, I used to have a lot of jokes. I would tell a joke here. I'm drawing a blank. Probably half the jokes that I used to know, I couldn't say anyway. So there's a card trick. I don't have any cards. We just learned a card trick this weekend too. Jenna's internet went down. So, oh no. So I don't know that I have the power to end the show. By the way, folks, this show is now never going to end. So we're just going to do like 24 hours. It'll be like the Truman Show. And it'll be like all Phil all the time. I mean, like I said, where there's a Phil, there's a way. You can't put a time limit on changing the world. So what the heck else are we going to talk about? What are stocks doing today? Okay. She said we're good and I can end now. So improvise, folks. Be fluid. That's another lesson here. So thanks to our faulty internet, another one of my Philisms, be willing to pivot. So on that note, enjoy your Memorial Day. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.